courtroom was silent, too silent. All eyes were on her, a young black woman, handcuffed and trembling, as two officers roughly shoved her forward. Gasps echoed when one of them struck her across the face. But what happened next, no one saw coming. In a heartbeat, she moved with a courage that shocked everyone in the room, an act that would shake the very foundation of the court. What drove her to do the unthinkable? And how could one moment of defiance change everything in a place built on rules and order?
She had always been careful, moving through life with quiet determination. A devoted daughter, a hard-working professional, someone who smiled at strangers and carried her dreams like a shield. On the surface, her life seemed ordinary. A small apartment in the city, long commutes, late nights at work. But beneath it was a fierce sense of justice, a voice that refused to be silenced. Yet, even in her most cautious moments, she had learned the world could be cruel. The courtroom she entered that day had always felt like a place of order and fairness, a place where truth mattered. But as she walked through its heavy doors, unaware of the storm about to hit, she carried more than papers and files. She carried every hope of being seen, of being treated fairly. And soon, everything she thought she knew about safety, authority, and justice would be tested in ways she could never have imagined.
The moment she stepped into the courtroom, a chill ran down her spine. Something felt off, though she couldn't put her finger on it. The judge was already seated, papers stacked neatly before them, the officers stationed like silent sentinels at the doors. She walked toward her designated spot, each step echoing in the high-ceilinged room. But before she could reach it, one of the officers stepped forward, blocking her path with a smirk that made her stomach twist. A warning voice, cold and clipped, cut through the air. "Stand over there," the officer said, shoving her roughly. The impact sent her stumbling, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Whispers started to ripple like waves through the audience benches. Eyes turned, some wide with shock, some blank with indifference. And then it happened. The slap. A sharp, public strike across her face meant not just to hurt, but to humiliate. Her cheek burned, her heart raced, and for a fleeting second, time froze. But she didn't fall. She didn't break. Instead, she straightened, shoulders squared, her pulse pounding like a drum in her ears. The officers stared, expecting compliance, expecting fear, but it didn't come. The audience shifted uncomfortably, the silence growing heavier with every passing second. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, some judging, some afraid, some silently rooting for her. And in that tense, frozen moment, a single thought crystallized in her mind. She would not be ignored. She would not be diminished. As the trial began, every question asked, every answer given became a battlefield. Every word from the officers seemed calculated to intimidate, to strip her of dignity. But with each attempt to control her, her resolve only strengthened. The injustice, the blatant disregard for her humanity lit a fire inside her, a fire that refused to be snuffed out by fear or authority. The courtroom became a theater of tension, every glance and gesture loaded with unspoken conflict. And then a pivotal moment arrived. The judge, previously an untouchable figure in her eyes, glanced down at the proceedings and hesitated, an expression of surprise flickering across their face. It was the first crack in the facade of absolute control, a tiny signal that her defiance could matter. She could see it in the way the officers stiffened, the way murmurs rose among the spectators, how the air itself seemed to tighten around the injustice being inflicted. Her heartbeat quickened. Something had shifted. A single choice, a single action could tip the scales, and she could sense that the moment was approaching, one that could change everything in that room. But would she take it? And if she did, would anyone in that courtroom be prepared for the consequences of her courage?
The courtroom felt smaller now, the walls pressing in, as if holding its breath alongside her. Every eye was fixed on her, every movement scrutinized, every heartbeat amplified. The officers advanced again, voices sharp, instructions clipped like weapons. But this time, she didn't step back. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the surge of something fiercer, defiance. In a moment that seemed to stretch, she moved, faster than anyone expected. Her chair scraped loudly against the polished floor as she pivoted, stepping toward the judge's bench with a determination that stunned the room into silence. Gasps rippled through the spectators. Whispers became murmurs of disbelief. The officers froze, mouths opening, but no words came.
She reached the seat, once a symbol of authority she had been denied, and lifted herself onto it, her eyes blazing with a mix of fury, courage, and clarity. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Officers shouted, pens dropped, papers fluttered, and the judge leaned back, stunned, unsure how to reclaim control. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted, even if only for a heartbeat. Her chest heaved as adrenaline surged. Every moment of humiliation, every injustice, every silent dismissal flashed through her mind. And yet, in this daring act, she found something profound: the undeniable force of her own agency. In a place built to suppress her, she had made herself impossible to ignore. But even as she sat there, victorious in her courage, a question hung over the room and over her. How far would the system go to reclaim control? And what would it cost her to have made her stand?
The courtroom slowly quieted, the chaos fading like the last echoes of a storm. She remained in the judge's seat, not out of defiance anymore, but as a symbol of courage, of refusal to be erased. The officer's shouts had softened, the spectators' murmurs turning into stunned silence. In that moment, she realized that even a single act of bravery could disrupt the machinery of oppression, if only briefly, if only in a way that demanded attention. Walking out of that room later, her body ached, her face still tingling from the blow, but her spirit felt unbroken, stronger than it had ever been. The world had tried to push her into submission, to silence her, to remind her of where she supposedly belonged. But she had reclaimed her voice, her presence, her humanity, and in doing so, reminded everyone who witnessed it that injustice could not go unchallenged. Her story is not just hers alone. It is a reflection of countless experiences where authority and prejudice collide, where dignity is tested and resilience is demanded. It is a reminder that racism is not just history. It is alive in subtle gestures, in institutional walls, in moments designed to intimidate and erase. Yet, even in the darkest, most rigid spaces, courage has the power to shine. A reminder that change, even small and fleeting, begins with refusing to stay silent.
And so the question lingers, long after the doors close and the courtroom empties. What would you do if faced with injustice? Would you step back, or would you, like her, rise in a moment that could change everything? Because sometimes all it takes is one act of bravery to remind the world that every life, every voice, and every human being matters. Her eyes, still burning with resolve, carry the weight of every injustice she has faced and the courage to face countless more. The story of her defiance lingers, a powerful reminder of the strength of human dignity and the quiet rebellion that can inspire the world.